department within TfL, as well as London Underground, to put together an initial risk register to give to the contractors, which featured TfL's holistic view of the risks on this project. In addition to this, I formatted with my team an early warning risk register, which I submitted as part of the ITT because I wanted the contractors to start buying in to a collaborative process for this contract. Now, when I went out to contractors to tender, I specified to them that I wanted them to fill out contract data part 2 in a manner which was complementary to contract data part 1, as well as the works inside it. And that's for obvious reasons, to ensure that the project was being executed in an appropriate manner and that we're pricing correct. Now, I also asked for a detailed program, activity schedule, and shorter schedule. I'll elaborate on this on the next page. In addition to this, I asked for the typical corporate documents, being CVs and previous experience, because I wanted to be able to demonstrate that I was appointing a contractor who was competent. In addition to this, I provided all of the tendering contractors with an indication of how I'd be marking the tenders, which is shown over here in this table. Now, finally, it's worth speaking a little bit about what I did with the tenders when I received them prior to the interviews. The first thing I did was I assessed tender quality with my team. I wanted to ensure that contractors which were being looked upon favorably prior to the interview were contractors that my team and I were happy to work with. In addition to this, as on the previous slide, I asked for an activity schedule, detailed program, and short schedule of cost components. For using these three items which were submitted at tender, I was able to run an adjusted tender total of the process, which effectively involves running a simulated compensation event to determine how contractors are likely to price them in and what their attitude to the contract value might be, i.e., may a contractor try and price events more heavily than others, such that they can increase the contract. And of course, this was done for a compensation event, which I thought was reasonable to happen. In addition to this, I ran a cash flow analysis, again using these three parameters, to check how each contractor was pricing the contract. This dotted black line over here represents the theoretical optimum spend, i.e. the S line, for mean value of the 4 tendering contractors, which are shown here for this enabling works package. Now, as you can see, contractor 2, for instance, the yellow line, fits this theoretical model quite nicely, which basically suggests that they have not been pricing a large amount of risk into the project and that their cash flow expenditure is reasonable, particularly when you compare it to contractor 4, for instance, who has got this incredibly, who's front-loaded their cash flow quite heavily. It indicates that they're likely to view the project as being quite risky. And by being able to group these two activities together, I was able to paint a pretty good preliminary image of what it would be like to work with each of the contractors, both from a collaborative perspective, but also from would I be able to meet the milestones required by the HIT. Finally, after this was done, I carried out an interview with my tender team, where I discussed the methods proposed by each contractor, including the proposed health and safety, and through that I was able to assess their competence. In addition to this, I discussed with them these 2 exercises which I'd done regarding their attitude towards the project, and following the interviews and scoring, I decided which the winning contractor should be. Once that winning contractor was selected, we started negotiating how contract data part 2 be refined to ensure that it very, very well matched contract data part 1, site works information, as well as which I was asking them to execute.
Two more minutes, Sergios, please.
Okay, thank you. So it's important to mention that this negotiation was being undertaken in late January, and unfortunately, late February, and when it came time to sign the contract, the COVID-19 shutdown happened, and consequently I advised that TfL should not be signing the contract at this time because I didn't want them to be liable for any compensation events which could have incurred through COVID-19. So during this presentation, I've spoken to you about the property development department within TfL and my role, the joint venture relationship which created time at TfL, the grant funding which was attached to the works, and the steps that I took to award the enabling works contract to the contractor. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I hope to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Sergios. Just one question to begin with, if I may. What proportion of the total contract of the total development was the enabling works?
I beg your pardon. What was
In terms of value, in terms of value, what proportion of the total value of the development was that of the enabling works?
Well, the full suite of the enabling works was substantially larger than the amount of money which had been delegated through the grant. I appreciate that the £5.7 million compared to an estimated build cost of around 90 million is probably not fully reflective of its cost, but it was money which had to be spent to ensure the viability of the scheme was there.
Indeed, but my question being that you've obviously went into a great deal of effort and care on the due diligence side of this. Do you think it was justified in view of the relatively low proportion of the total value of the development that the enabling works represented?
I completely understand your point. I'd say that because the scheme's viability was so marginal, which was why we were able to apply for the HIF grant, it was reasonable, because without that HIF grant there, we wouldn't be able to deliver almost 600 homes, 40% affordable. So I understand that perhaps that package didn't require that amount of attention, but given...
Would it have been if the floor-to-ceiling heights were bigger than they should have been? Would that not have been a challenge you could have introduced earlier by saying, go back and adjust what the ceiling height, you can get more housing in? Or was this a developer to load value in development later in the project?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to blame the developer for doing it in a sneaky way, but it is a common concept for developers to come and try and put additional floor levels into a building. I did try and pressure them to reduce it, but they were